Wow, that was a nice music over there. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Smart Sourcing Submit webinar series 2. Thank you for being with us here today, and I'm very sure all of you are busy between time to 4 to 6, but we've got some interesting topics that we're about to speak today. We are talking about resetting leadership in disruptive times. All right, so we have brought together a group of good panelists, okay, not only from Malaysia. We have Kerry, who's all the way from London, from the UK. We have Aniran, all the way from Netherlands, who's our moderator. And we have Imran, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. And of course, we have Alex and Anthony, who have also joined us from here, who are our local champions here as well. Okay, so welcome. And good to see all of you here today on a bright sunny day. Bright here is a bit gloomy, but anyway, it's a great day. So without further ado, I will want to play a video from our organizing chair regards his message on about the summit. Yeah, just give me a second.
A recent paper published by the Board of Innovation contends that a low-touch economy is here to stay. It characterizes the economy made up of new habits and regulations based on reduced interactions and stricter restrictions. Brought about by the scars of this pandemic, the way we work and play will certainly change. We hear recession will spread to almost all economies. But as always happens during periods of crisis and change, there will also be new opportunities and areas for growth. Capitalizing on these opportunities will require us to rethink our business strategies. There is an urgent need to pivot our strategies to the changes in consumer behavior. recent paper published by the Board of Innovation contends that a low-touch economy is here to stay. It characterizes the economy made up of new habits and regulations based on reduced interactions and stricter restrictions. Brought about by the scars of this pandemic, the way we work and play will certainly change. We hear recession will spread to almost all economies. But as always happens during periods of crisis and change, there will also be new opportunities and areas for growth. Capitalizing on these opportunities will require us to rethink our business strategies. There is an urgent need to pivot our strategies to the changes in consumer behavior, which is being driven by hygiene and efficacy factors. As we move towards a contactless economy and consider how to best leverage on digital technologies, we need the right governance framework in place. This includes recruitment best practices, performance and productivity monitoring guidelines, as well as technology platforms that will address information security. Simply put, it requires us to reimagine business services. To find out just exactly how, come join us at the Smart Sourcing Summit 2020 and be part of the scintillating conversations with industry leaders.
All right. Okay, so that was from Raymond, the opening address from him. So I will now pass you on to Anirban Sen, who will introduce himself as to his background, and he will take the show henceforth. All the best to the team. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you, Justin, for the introduction. A couple of words about me. I am essentially a master trainer, and I run a couple of companies. Fifth Chrome is one of them. We are in the advisory and training space in the world of mergers and acquisitions, international business, and digital innovation. And on the other side, we also run an events company called Roundtable Insights, where we pick up global trending topics and conduct virtual
Anirban?
Yeah.
Okay. Something wrong with this line.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, I think he's trying to reconnect.
Yeah. Did I get thrown out?
Yeah, we lost you just now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I guess, yeah, this is something that we need to get used to, low touch economy, right? Okay. So I was talking about myself. As I mentioned, two companies, Fifth Chrome and the Roundtable Insights. I've also recently published a book on digital innovation and how to use digital innovation to accelerate business growth. I've worked across the globe. I've got very strong connections with Malaysia. In fact, I consider Malaysia as my second home. And that's about me. And now let's get the actual webinar get started. The actual panel discussion gets started. So the topic for today is resetting leadership in disruptive times. What I must say that before we get the topic started, I like the video that was shared. We talked about low touch economies, and I think what we need to do is also talk about some of the other trends that are taking place, which were already there even before COVID-19 came up. So while we understand COVID-19 has created an unprecedented time for all of us, in fact, most of us cannot recall any other time similar to this ever before in our lives. But the other trends which were already brewing in the horizon, they were already there. That would disrupt the way we do business, the way we do things in the 2020s as well. So no talk would be complete without also talking about those trends. And that's why I put in a single slide with some of those trends to get our discussion started. So just hold on while I set, and I hope I don't drop down again from my. Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes, we
Cool.
can.
Yes. So the first one that I want you to talk about is aging population. So this is something where um, and very, very important part of the way we're going to do things in the 2020s, right? If you look at the baby boomers, people who were born right after the World War till about 1960, 65, most of these people are going to hit into the retirement age. So which means that once they get into the retirement age or retire from their jobs, that they would be looking for additional support from healthcare. They would be working off pensions and so on and so forth. And certain economies, especially the Western economies, as well as economies of Japan and China, is going to see that the median age of the population is going to go up, and which means that there is going to be a lot more support required for the aging population from the government and otherwise. And what you'll see, the taxpayers is going to be less number of people who are in the young generation. So this one, which is extremely important between 2020s and 2030s, that we will see a large part of the population, baby boomers, will get into the retirement stage. So that's the first trend. The second trend is this is also the period when Gen Z, people who were born after 1995, will start joining the workforce. And what we need to keep in mind is that unlike baby boomers and Gen X's and some of the millennials as well, the Gen Z people are by default digital natives. So they have grown up in the period of Google and Facebook. So this is something that uh, they are, because they have grown up with Google and Facebook and Snapchat, they don't know or they do not have awareness of what the world was before. Can I just ask somebody? Um, there's somebody who's speaking. Can you put your?
Yeah, we're trying to turn them off.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the second part, which is the Gen Z going to join the workforce, and by default, they are going to bring in their habits, which are digitally native. So which means that they would probably be looking at collaboration with other colleagues through their smartphones. They may be looking at ways to look at Google searches, their own ways of finding information. So that's the second trend, which is going to define the 2020s. The third trend, and I think that is probably one of the most important ones, is the 5G. Now, imagine what happened when 4G was introduced. We saw with 4G and bit of analytics and user interfaces, we saw the birth of likes of Uber. And now Uberization as a term is something that has percolated all across businesses. Now we talk about, whenever we talk about creating a platform, we say we want to Uberize a particular sector, or we want to have an Uberization for a particular process, etc. So that's the kind of impact we saw that happened during the 4G or after the 4G introduction. Now, with AI and IoT and all of these new age technologies built in, with 5G, we're going to see a massive increase in innovation as well. And we don't know yet what those innovations are going to be. And it is going to be an extremely important time and an interesting time where we will see that new innovations are going to come in, and it's going to disrupt the way we do things. Uh-oh. The third one is cross-border trade. Now, this is where, while over the last 30, 40 years, we've enjoyed globalization at a massive scale, But now, because of different government policies, economic pressures, we are now faced with scenarios where governments have started putting nationalistic borders. We have also started witnessing trade wars, which are global trade wars. Between, let's say, some of the larger economies in the West versus some of the emerging markets. U.S.-China trade wars are, quite talked about. But there are also other trade wars that are going to take place, and because of which nationalistic boundaries are going to come up. Brexit is another example that happened, and it's going to have some ramifications in the way business gets conducted. Now, what exactly is going to be those ramifications? Only time can tell, but this is definitely going to be something that is going to take place in the 2020s. The fifth one is reshape jobs. As per Gartner or Forbes, or if you pick up any of the other, let's say, leading companies, or even for that matter, some of the leading companies like Dell, they have predicted that between 60 to 80% of the jobs, what we've known in the conventional world, are going to be rewritten. There is going to be a deconstruction of jobs, which is going to shape up in this particular decade. So, for example, people who were doing conventional jobs like accounting or let's say some HR generalist jobs now would be faced with, in the coming decade, would be faced with reskilling challenges because of the use of AI and big data and some of the other new age technologies. There is going to be a lot more emphasis on the digital components that would be required for these jobs. So this is something that companies need to start looking at very, very carefully as we get into the 2020s. And the last one is, of course, COVID-19. So now all of a sudden you see that the landscape is no longer just about COVID-19 making an impact, but there are other trends which are equally impactful that is going to shape up and disrupt the 2020s. So with that, I would get started with our session today. Let me first start with an introduction, and I'll stop sharing my screen here. So let's start all the way from down under. Imran, let's start with your introduction.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Imran, and I work with boards and CEOs to make sure that their business strategy is ready to face digital disruption on one end and black swan events like COVID-19 on the other. So it's a lot of business these days. This comes on the back of a 20-year career in multiple industries, ranging from IT BPM to finance to palm oil and other commodities. And media and so many others. So I think roughly, I'm very excited, in the kind of changes that are being faced by boards and CEOs, and really excited to empower them to make sure that they come through this very strongly.
Thank you, Imran. Anthony.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Gerald, and I'm from Kaskapi Berhad. I represent this company as a CEO, running the operations and the sales and also the business for the F&B sector. We are one of the oldest pioneer F&B supply solution provider in Southeast Asia. We've been around for the last 42 years. And the company has started innovating in the last 2 years with my leadership. My experience comes from hands-on being an F&B operator myself, and I've graduated into IT operations, and I've been in SAP, and I've been in Kodik Store running retail solution businesses. And here I am. Thank you very much for this invitation. And I hope I could share some light on how we are innovating as a company, bringing digital technology to all our customers that are embarking into this. Thank you.
And let's go to Alex He. Alex, you're muted.
Hi, I'm Alex He. I'm the founder and managing director of Documentation that has been 20 years already, since 2001. So what we do, we are the leader in the providing dynamic solution to help organization provide multi-channel delivery for all the transactional documents. major focus are on customer from financial institution and oil and gas, where we process the data, cater for printing, mailing, e-delivery, e-channel.
Thank you, Alex. Kerry?
Hi, it seems weird for me to say good afternoon, but good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's just gone 9 o'clock in the morning for me, so greetings from London. My name's Kerry Hallard and I'm the Chief Exec of the Global Sourcing Association. So the GSA is the industry association and professional body for strategic sourcing. We represent the interests of the enterprise buyers, the service providers, the startup economy, and also those that provide advisory services to both sides of the sourcing equation.
Thank you, Kerry. So today we've been joined with a very diverse portfolio of panelists. And now we're going to get the discussion going. But before I do that, can I request the other people to switch off their videos as well as put themselves on mute so that we can have a seamless conversation here. And then the second thing is also, if you have any questions as we go through the panel discussion, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box so that one of our organizers, Justin, or somebody from his team is going to look at those questions. We're going to regularly interact with the audience and pick up those questions and ask one of the panel members to reflect on those questions. So that's something which is there. And the third thing is there's also going to be some poll questions that we will put in. So you'll probably need to use your voting buttons on your laptop or your smartphones, and you can participate in those polls as well. So that's what I wanted to share. And now let's talk about some of the challenges that the crisis has thrown up. And let's start with Anthony. Anthony, maybe you can throw some of the challenges that you and your company is facing because of the current crisis.
Yeah, certainly the first challenge that we as a company has faced is in terms of sales. Our business has taken a tremendous trip in the last 3 months or so. And what we had to do was we had to regroup ourselves, and we also had challenges with employees who were demoralized with the whole situation because personally and psychologically everybody was impacted. And this went on. It was a sudden thing when the government announced in Malaysia that they're going to do a severe lockdown. People were not prepared. Companies were not prepared. So everyone was scrambling. But fortunately, we did not have any panic situations in Malaysia where people started panic buying. Only in certain circumstances we had sufficient food. People took it a little bit more matured in the environment, and employers and employees had to be playing a more support role in this situation that we went through. So it was quite a tremendous challenge because it was not easy for anyone to just go up there and motivate someone and say, hey, everything is going to be over, things are going to be nice, just hang in there, let's move on. It's not going to be there. So there was a lot of uncertainty within personally from everybody of us. So as a company, we also went through that. And of course, I think the first thing that I did as a key person in the organization was to get the entire leadership team into the teams and started telling them that the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We are financially going to handle this. We're going to make sure our employees' welfare is well taken care of. We've got to make sure that we are there in terms of a role and support model. So we broke up our leadership team to be more involved with a lot of discussions, involved with a lot of strategy, innovation, started getting them involved, started getting their mind a little bit off from what they were going through periodically at home. So we started doing some of these things. And we were quite lucky as well because we did invest in a lot of technology, stabilization. So we started adopting the Teams meetings. We started using all these tools in the last 6 to 8 months before we had this pandemic problem. So everybody was slowly getting the culture of getting into it and adopting to it. So these are some of the challenges we faced. So it was a tremendous amount of challenge for the first 2 months of the whole situation. So it was very, very impactful in terms of personnel and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. Alex, you've been associated with the shared services industry and you supporting international clients. How or
Yeah.
what are the challenges that you've been facing?
Mine is actually more on the outsourcing services. It's a backroom operations for mainly the insurance industry and the oil and gas. So the challenges during the lockdown is, of course, when nobody can go out to do sales, the insurance agent are not allowed to do sales. There's no car running on the road, so all the business is down. So there's no statement. Nobody can churn out the data for us to process it to send it to the customer. But because the insurance is the essential services in Malaysia during the earlier stage of the MCOs, same as the oil and gas. So we are allowed to operate under a very strict MCO guidelines, where we here make sure 50% of the workforce only allow on site on premises. So all the IT people basically is working from home, but luckily it's during we implement all this technology that many months back where we have to cater for all this ISO, the 27001 on the ISMS that allow us to easier to move into the getting staff to work from home. But then we scramble with not enough notebooks for everybody, even when we want to buy notebook also there's nobody is selling notebooks online. Yeah, so those are the challenges we're facing.
Right, Alex. Kerry, in the Western world, it's been different sort of lockdown compared to what we have heard and seen in likes of Malaysia, in places like Malaysia. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
So I'm not sure that the lockdown's been that different over here. So, we did actually have it that nobody could go out at all apart from supermarket shopping. We are now easing that lockdown, but it's compulsory to wear masks everywhere you go and not be in groups bigger than 6 people still. So we're still very much in a lockdown situation here in the United Kingdom. The first thing across our membership base was business continuity. It was just how did they manage to keep the wheels turning and the lights on? And if we are to look at the response of the partners that deliver the services to our members around the world, it has been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm so incredibly proud of how well this industry of partnering around the world has really delivered and come together. It's been really, really exceptional. So, service providers, whether they were in India, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, they made their IT workers seen as essential key workers by their governments, enabled them to go on out and carry on delivering these services. And if that hadn't have happened, we would have been in very, very dire straits in terms of our supply chains and delivering any level of service. But as it happened, everybody seemed to have got through and got things running within a 2-week period phenomenally. So yeah, business continuity was absolutely the first thing. I think once the panic sort of died down and people got into a sort of status quo, it started really focusing on the workforce and the wellness of the workforce. So lots of people are very, very happy working from home and actually feel that their lifestyle has improved and will want to continue working from home. But then there is a lot of people that had a lot of anguish, do not have the right setup to be able to work well from home, especially those that are a lot younger that want to be in a much more social environment and are finding themselves now working from their bedrooms, living in their bedrooms. This is obviously a big issue. So the wellness of the workforce is a really, really big issue. And the third one is now focus on cutting costs. There have been some industries that have boomed, whether that's the logistics industry, food retailers, e-commerce. These have boomed, but there's been obviously a lot of bust. You look at travel, tourism, and those, we're seeing huge job losses in the UK, and a lot of companies are looking at how they can keep going, and cost-cutting measures are a key focus at the moment. So I'd say those are the 3 main areas we've been looking at.
Right. Thank you, Kerry. Yeah, I think I actually didn't realize the kind of lockdown that you guys had versus on the continent. Our lockdown was a lot more liberal. While people were recommended to follow that social distancing of about 1.5 meters, In practice, people did do that. In the initial stages, yes, supermarkets were open, the other shops were closed, or some of the other shops were closed, but gradually things started opening up. So we had a lot more liberal lockdown. But interestingly, some of the items that you mentioned, one of the things that I've read a couple of weeks back about a newspaper article, it said in Netherlands, they predict that there is going to be $4 billion impact or euro impact on the economy because of the future or the new normal work. They said about 1.3 billion is going to be saved through office space and real estate that is no longer required. About another 1.2 with respect to people not having to travel to their workplace, and like many other places in the Western world, people often end up traveling 50, 60 miles, 70 miles each way to get to their workplace. So that's going to dramatically reduce. And then because of all of this, there is also going to be a positive impact on the environment with less carbon footprint. And that is going to save another 1.1. So in total, they expect kind of a 4 billion. They predict that if things were to continue like this, they predict about 4 billion impact, positive impact on the economy. So that was a couple of data points. Imran, you're in the eye of the storm as we speak. Melbourne is under lockdown. What are some of the challenges that you see are taking shape in your part of the world?
Yeah, I think, see, we Melbourne had the first lockdown as well, right? And it was pretty strict. And so we just backed on the second one. I think the first one was more challenging than the second one in terms of just getting business community planning going and stuff like that. Unfortunately, Australia does not outsource offshore as much, say as the UK or other parts of the world. So, for example, for Voice, I know Telstra struggled. Because they had their call centers in India and Philippines, and they couldn't really, get that underway, and they're looking at bringing it back onshore. But most of the others actually did not offshore, but they're outsourced. So let me give you an example. So some of the bigger banks, the big four banks, what they have done is they've taken some of their billion-dollar transformational projects and handed it over to a big player like say Infosys or Tata. And they brought over engineers and people to work on these projects based on short-term visas, so 3-4 year visas. And that model has been doing very well since the global financial crisis for those big, Australian banks are huge. We have just 4 big ones, right? And that has worked. So what happened with COVID is that some of the staff have been caught in different parts of the world, right? Some of them were onshore, and they were very easily scalable in terms of starting off because they usually live and work very close to these banks. Others were trapped in other parts of the world, right? And they couldn't get back fast enough because we basically closed our airports and there's very limited entry. So I think the Australian model has been resistant to offshoring, but there is some onshore outsourcing, and I think that kind of kept things going. So we weren't really that badly affected in terms of operational. I think there are more humanitarian issues in terms of running out of toilet paper and or basic panic buying that comes in society. But I think in terms of the bigger companies running, I think there wasn't as much in terms of challenges. But for me, the biggest challenge has been really trying to convince our clients to keep an eye on the medium and long-term strategy as much as focusing on the short-term strategy. And I think, see, for example, in March or early March, April, I very clearly told our clients we're going to head for a second wave, right? Because Victoria is one of the coldest states in Australia, so the winter is going to be very bad for us, right? And there's going to, and this is a virus. Virus comes in waves, and whatever you do, you need to be prepared for it. But they weren't really looking at the medium term, or even now to look at the long term strategy. So I think that's a bigger challenge in trying to keep the eye on focus on the medium and long term strategy.
Thank you, Imran. Kerry, just extending on the point that you mentioned about job losses, and on the other side, we also hear in the US some of the new labor, especially when it comes to international workforce that is working in the US with the restriction on H-1Bs, etc. What are some of the nuances that are evolving, developing, and what are some of the industry trends? Certain industries are feeling the impact a lot more than some of the other industries, which actually are booming in spite of the crisis.
Okay, so yeah, it's interesting. Whilst you were given your stat on the 4 billion, I thought I'd quickly Google the latest figures on how much COVID-19 was going to cost the British government. So this year alone, the bailout package is £300 billion, which is just absolutely massive for a 12-month period. So, so yes, you know, obviously we're very concerned that there are going to be job losses. But from my perspective and from the perspective of our membership base, you know, we're really hoping that we're not going to see a massive drive towards nationalism, protectionism of jobs. And I don't think that's going to be a healthy way forward. Main reason being is, sure, there's going to be unemployed people in the UK, and we need to do a massive reskilling program, but we don't have the right skills available to drive companies out of this inevitable downturn. So we're going to need to carry on accessing the global talent pool all around the world to enable companies to innovate and drive transformation as quickly as they possibly can. But simultaneously, absolutely, we're going to have to be running a major reskilling program where people that are losing their jobs in probably fairly basic processing areas need to be reskilled, taught digital technology skills and things like that. But that's obviously going to take some time, and as such, it's really important for us to carry on tapping into the global talent pool. We've undertaken research from our members, and there is no sign of a drive to onshoring. In fact, there is signs of the fact that our members are going to look at further blending their global footprint to help them mitigate risk even further. So they're even more assured against a future pandemic because they've got pockets of work all around the globe. So, so yeah, that's one thing that we're certainly seeing. But what had already started, and it's one of the trends that you were alluding to, and I think will really pick up, is the ongoing use of the gig economy. So we will see more gig workers all around the world working in our space and working in the space of business service delivery. So I think that's really going to take off as we come through COVID.
Excellent. Alex, kind of extending on that thought process, what are some of the nuances that you're witnessing in Malaysia or ASEAN in general? I guess you're on mute again.
Yes. Malaysia started the lockdown since middle of March. You know, we call in Malaysia this lockdown, we call it movement control orders, in short for MCO. So now we are in phase 5 of MCO, where we until end of 31st August, end of August, and businesses already start. The government already allowed most of the business to operate besides some entertainment like those nightclubs and things like that. Otherwise, even school starting 15, school start. Some of the schools started today already, you know, so children can go back to school, but they have a lot of social distancing. But even in the whole region, you're talking about government is talking about how to enable, we call it a bubble traveling, that enable those country in green area to be able for business travel to travel. So those are the areas I think they are targeting sometime early August, where the government, maybe some of the government, maybe Malaysia and Singapore, you know, they're already negotiating how the workers can go back to from Malaysia to Singapore to work, those that commute daily from Johor to Singapore, you know. And then we talk about the tourism sectors that is obviously badly affected in the whole world. Airlines all in bad shape. Our AirAsia also officially is classified PN17. Luckily, the based on the Bursa, the listing regulatory to say that, okay, you guys are, during this special time, a lot of things is not considered on the financial constraint. But then, yeah, we see a lot of impacts, but business is picking up now. Just that, take the reference from China, because they have a 3-month head start for the rest of the world to follow, and they realize that even now, tourism, people not really spending, and people don't really go to supermarket that frequent or really shopping, you know. So there's a lot of activities the government is doing to encourage all this go back to the stir the economy, more economic activities. But even in Malaysia, the government is always careful to say that wear mask and social distancing. So these are the basic principles and follow the SOP. So everywhere we go, we have to wear mask, social distancing, and follow SOP. Even in office, SME, big corporates, everybody is just doing that. Wear mask, social distancing, and follow SOP.
Right, Alex. Anthony, how about the job losses and the shaping up of gig economy, especially in the light that I know governments in Malaysia, places like Malaysia, they constantly try to skill the workforce in some shape or form. There are grants given by the governments to upgrade the skills. Uh, what's happening there with respect to gig economy and people losing jobs?
Yeah. So I would say that primarily the government has put in a lot of emphasis and they are giving in a lot of grants and opportunities for everyone to skill up and pick up this whole process of being given to the public and also to the customers. Primarily, if I shift the whole magnitude of the business that we do in the F&B, I would say that probably the F&B operators, I mean worldwide or even in Southeast Asia, they have been the guys who have been the least adopters of technology and digital. And if you look at it across Southeast Asia, uh, even cashless, when every opportunity or every drive has been given to go digital from cash to cashless, the adoption rate was very low, right? So this pandemic situation has really hit the industry quite bad because when this happened, they were not prepared to do deliveries, they were not prepared to scale their resources down. The guys that are running the kitchen operation is inadequately able to run the digital portion of the business. So it shifted a lot of magnitude and it shifted a lot of change. And I see now that all the restaurants are primarily starting to think. Number one is they have come back to us and they've come back to many providers that have got this digital platform to embrace the technology. So you see in Southeast Asia, a survey done by Master and Visa a couple of weeks ago, 37% of people started using the wallet, started using cashless. So the whole contactless dimension is starting, the whole hype is starting. So I guess with this whole change and with this whole reshape that's happening, the adoption rates are getting faster. And a lot of startup companies, a lot of young gig companies that have got technology platforms are offering these platforms for free. And the government is giving incentive for the operators to pick it up. In the same time, a lot of the startup companies have also opened up. For example, like us, we work through a partner like Picom and also MDAC to get a lot of people who are not able to do this being enabled. So we're also running a lot of uh, classes, courses, seminars to get them technologically adopted so that they can basically manage their business from a technology perspective. So we see restaurants now started being absolutely open. You see a lot of restaurants in Malaysia, they don't give you physical menus, they give you QR codes. They expect customers to bring their own device, scan your own QR code, make your orders through it, and then eventually make your own payment. So the whole change equation of people starting to adopt this, customers starting to pick this up, is starting to change the whole landscape of the whole adoption of this technology in a very, very fast pace. So I would think that this has put in a lot of pressure to a lot of companies to immediately adopt it. So whether the government is giving incentive or whether the company is starting to do it, eventually the pressure is already there for you to adopt all these technologies and digital. So I think that has opened up a whole new infrastructure, a whole new dimension towards this whole business that we are looking at.
Right. Thank you, Anthony. Imran, you're based in Australia and you have Sri Lankan heritage. Australia is a mineral-rich country, and whereas Sri Lanka has been largely dependent on tourism and, of course, on agriculture. Do you think that there is a difference between the countries which are mineral rich or versus countries that are dependent on tourism or who do not have natural resources, that the way they're tackling the situation is different?
Yes, I think so. But say, for example, the Australian government has put in almost $260 billion as of now into all sorts of packages, JobKeeper, which is supplement salaries, so that companies can keep people on for a long period of time. But that's something in the at the end of September there might be a chance of being added on. But on the other hand, if you take a developing country like Sri Lanka that hasn't government support, basically there hasn't been much government support at all because their fiscal space doesn't really allow them to give that. So I think there is definitely a difference in how it is tackled. But I think it also looks at even minerals. For example, Australia is very blessed in a way because we have something that China always needs, which is iron ore, right? And whatever sanctions that or whatever political problems you have on the student numbers, which are a big part of our economy, the university students from overseas, or tourism.
There's a bit of an audio issue. You sort of coming in waves. So because you're saying a lot of interesting things, maybe if you could look at the audio.
Yeah.
At your end.
Let me try to get on a. Yeah, let me see what I. Yeah, let me see what I can get.
Oh, this is so much better. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the challenges are that Australia, because of its mineral richness, hasn't really adopted technology. For example, right? And we are way behind the world in adoption of technology. And I'd say we are 10 years behind the US, for example, in some respects. And therefore, our ability to pivot, to a low-touch economy is not as high as as some of the other Southeast Asian countries, for example. Some of the South Asian countries are also far better in terms of the adoption. They adopted 4G faster. There's a lot more wireless payments, etc., etc. So I think yes, you're right in terms of the different impacts. But overall, I think everybody's affected because for the developing country, their client is perhaps the West, and when their disposable income or ability to spend on larger transformational projects are less, it affects you as well. Right? But I have seen a lot of some business move towards developing countries. For example, I know some work from the UK in relation to legal process outsourcing has kind of quickly moved to places like Sri Lanka. I know a lot of the software work. For example, Wiley, a huge American publisher, set up a center recently there to develop their software, and they've been hiring at a phenomenal pace, paying packages that are unheard of, to a point where they're going to be the largest producer of software in the world, surpassing Russia, which was their previous one. I just know HCL, a huge Indian player, started recently as well. So I think longer term trends that you discuss are happening because there is a flight to quality. Sri Lanka is not India. It cannot produce, for example, huge numbers in terms of service, but we are a more higher end suppliers. For example, the quality of our software engineering is considered very high, so much so that the software that is run in London Stock Exchange and about 50 to 60 other stock exchanges around the world is being produced in Sri Lanka. Pearson has one of the largest software development hubs in the world in Sri Lanka. So I think there is a unique offering that you can provide. And I think this this crisis, what it has done is it has accentuated trends that started before the crisis. I think that's the key thing I'm seeing here. And if companies can keep an eye out for the medium and long term, they'll also notice these trends, and only those trends I think are sustainable.
Very interesting. Thank you, Imran. Justin, I think we can now switch on the audience poll, the first set. And while Justin is setting it up, from the audience, if you have, at this point in time, if you have any questions, then please put it in the chat box. We will also have the panelists answer the first round here.
Yeah, the poll is up.
Can the audience see the poll? Just ensuring.
Yes, you have to look at the chat. You look at the chat, the poll is in the chat, so you need to select and submit. It's coming in.
Yeah, so for the people who are in the audience, the poll is in the chat box. So because I see still a large number of people have not voted yet, it's important that we get your input into the poll. So please use the voting button and yeah, provide your input. So the question of the first poll is, what is the main challenge that you foresee for your organization in the new normal? When I talk about your organization, this could be the organization that you're an employee of or that you are contracted to. And if you're a consulting company or if you're a service provider, then you could also potentially mention your client's organization.
So we have about 23 votes all in.
Okay. Cool. So let's see. So in the next 10 seconds, we are going to close the voting. So if you haven't used the voting button yet, this is your chance. All right. Okay. So yeah, the voting is closed. So if we look at the results essentially suggest that it's refreshing. Cost pressure is the highest, which is of concern, and followed by performance and management control. So cost pressure is 28%, performance and management control 24%, team morale and spirit 24%. Data and information security is 8%, and management style barriers is 16%. What's interesting to observe is the 8% of data and information security. One of the things that people across the globe, organizations across the globe, used to tell people about working from home is the data and information security. But now with COVID-19, we see a complete, complete spinning in and moving onto a new set of what should I say? A new set of thinking here. So let me get the panelists to reflect on the results. You can take either the highest or the lowest. So Imran, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I find it very interesting that we're talking about the whole world becoming more digital and going online, and we consider information security as not being as important, and we're considering cost pressures as being important. So if you're competing on cost and therefore you're feeling the pressure, I think the future is not very bright because I think you need to be adding more value in terms of either performance or in terms of productivity. Because if you're still a cost-based player, you're in trouble going forward. I think because information and data is the new oil, and as my favorite quote these days is what Lenin said, right? For decades nothing happens, right? And in weeks decades happen. right?
Correct.
So, I mean, that's an amazing quote. That's exactly what we've been doing, right? We've been pivoting from homes and try to provide a world-class service to customers who are in critical industries, whether it is financial services, whether it is medicine, whether it is media, anything else, right? And we haven't really put in the protocols required for data and other security, before that. Now the problem is, if you haven't put them in place before the crisis, you can't suddenly pivot and put them, on the go. For see, the large part of data loss and cybersecurity issues are related to human behavior, right? And human behavior really cannot be changed overnight. It's a process, right? It's a journey. And I think I think while we are looking at business continuity planning and so on, you also need to look at the critical challenges you're going to face in the next 3 to 6, 12 months, which is going to be people trying to get into your systems and play around with them, because the penalties, particularly in your in the countries which you are supplying, for example, are very high for leakages of data, right? Just this week we are looking at the second anniversary of GDPR. And what the regulators in Europe have done, for example, is being quite lenient in terms of the application of penalties and sanctions and so on. And even in the first 6 months of COVID, I'm sure that they will give you a little leeway. But going forward, I think they're going to get come back very strongly on this. And I think for me, this is the biggest issue actually that you should be focusing on together with productivity. Yeah.
But if we don't have business, then the information security will always be secondary. I'm just kind of reflecting there. Alex, you had something that you wanted to say.
I beg to differ a bit based on whatever explained on this cost pressure. It's very much depend on which industry you're from. If you're from the outsourcing industry, where you charge your customer based on your productivity, and suddenly everything locked down, nobody can go back to office. And obviously there's a cost pressure that we have to manage from the outsourcing industry perspective, you see, or even all the call centers or anybody else. Because outsourcing means everything is charged by the productivity. That is the reason I can foresee that why the cost pressure is very high rated here. But it's also important that the data and information security, even though it's ranked very low, but I understand that in Malaysia perspective, a lot of banks, even though there's, or even insurance company, or even a lot of call centers, when I call up a call center to complain about credit card bills, basically all these people is working from home and they are not able to access to the system, to the core system, the core insurance system or the core banking system, due to security reason or IT security reason, you see. So that is a reason. I'm not sure, maybe out of the 25 people that is voted, but majority will be on the cost pressure, because I think I can see that most of them are from the outsourcing service industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting angle that you bring in, and I'm now going to relay what I just said. But if you do not look at data and information security in the long run, you will have no business. So, Kerry, reflection from your side on the results?
Yeah, I voted, and I voted on cost pressure, as I do think that's going to be the key issue for the vast majority of members, but depending on obviously which sector and vertical sector they're in. Data and information security, that didn't surprise me that was the lowest, because I think we have gone through GDPR, and as a result, most organisations have spent a lot of time and effort focusing on their data and information security and have actually nailed that. There obviously was the move of customer services moving out of call centres, and obviously the handling of sensitive information in people's homes hasn't been allowed, which is why we've reduced the level of customer service, just to ensure there aren't any breaches. I also think the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, has been slightly sort of more laid back in COVID-19 than they probably would have been otherwise. And I agree with you, Imran, that if companies don't step up, then there could be some enforcement moving forward. But I think it's it's not surprise. It's not a surprising result for me. Even though it's only a small sample, I'd have gone that way myself.
Right, right, sure, absolutely. Anthony, reflection on the team morals and spirit and management style barriers,
Yeah.
especially in what I've seen is a lot of companies they have moved to working remotely, but many of them have the hope that they will be getting back to their original workplace, and that's why they're not necessarily too bothered about the team morale or the performance of the teams and as well as the management styles. But you and I and most of the members here today know that to manage remote teams need different skills compared to managing teams that are co-located with you. What's your take?
Yeah, I totally agree. It is absolutely a 360 degrees dimensional shift, behavioral shift, and basically it is not easy. And I totally agree with the poll that this is one area that has contributed quite a substantial challenge for us. But I guess with the fact here is the mindset after a period of time is everybody know it's not norm, it's a pre-norm, and in that manner, um, there is really not much an organization can do as to give such morale and confidence to the employee, but they have to be really a self-starter and they have to really pick up themselves and start doing it. And I think the other flip side of the whole situation is people just couldn't be laid back, staying home and not doing anything. They were absolutely bored. They were absolutely going crazy, having so much of time. And I would think that the productivity level that I've seen in my organization has typically increased. That means output of resources that are traveling too much, that are spending too much of time doing lunch and spending very little time productively working. Their output of productivity has increased quite a lot. So I see that they are more productive. They are more eager to get on a meeting. They are more eager to be open into discussion. They have not much distractions, right? So I see a lot of positive inputs. I see a lot of interesting inputs. People are reading more. People are knowing what's going on. People are picking up weaknesses. People are reading a lot of motivational books, a lot of management books. So I see certain level of executives now are behaving like managers and managers behaving like directors. So I would see that this has phenomenally pushed up the whole situation. But of course, I would see that the whole thing has put a lot of positive pressure on the whole sense, right? More so for my organization.
Very good to hear, Anthony. Anybody else on the sustainability on Anthony's idea? I think there is a lot of positiveness, especially if you can work sitting in your pajamas. Many people would love that, and especially people who do long commutes. They would love being at home and have that flexibility. Is that long-term sustainable? Any
Uh,
reflections?
yeah, just to add something on that. See, I think in the short term, definitely motivation is increasing. However, I think in the medium to long term, particularly for younger employees or new employees, I feel that they may not be able to create the kind of relationships that they need, or at a face-to-face level that will help their career in the medium and long term. For me, that's really the only long-term concern about working from home is that these relationships that are critical to building a career for various younger and not necessarily younger, but people who are just entering the workforce. They could be of any age. It's just that within that organization, they needed to build those relationships that permit work from home being effective in the long term.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I
a
think
very yeah. Sorry, Kerry, go on.
so. I was going to say, I think it's a big challenge and one that I'm facing at the moment. It's actually onboarding new employees in a COVID environment. That is really, really difficult because, normally you learn from your colleagues sat around you, you overhear conversations, and that's a really critical way of actually beginning to understand the organisation and how to do things. And when you can't listen in, it is really quite hard to pick up everything that the organisation does and how to do the processes. So I think that is a challenge. But one of the interesting stats we've got is that there are so many more meetings being done in this working from home environment. And in fact, although it is kind of difficult to sell to somebody you've never ever actually met, the whole RFP process is massively sped up as well. So there are some positives from this virtual way of working. And for us at the GSA, we were based in Soho in central London, right in the heart of the Theatreland, and for 20 years, and we've given up our offices. We're now going to be permanently in a work from home environment because we just realised we didn't need the overhead of such expensive real estate. And I know there's a lot of our members that are reducing their office footprint as well. So yeah, but you've got to bear in mind who you then recruit when you're in a permanent work from home environment. So one of my council members has got this great analogy, and that is, some people are cats and some people are dogs. So some people like just to be on their own and doing their own thing, but then the dogs are incredibly social creatures that just want to be around other people all the time and feed off that positive energy. So working from home isn't for everybody, and you really have to be mindful of that as an employer. It's a big challenge.
Excellent. Now we'll go into sort of the shared services industry specifically, and we'll do a deep dive because most of us have some relations with the shared services. What are some of the specific challenges and some of the nuances that we're seeing in the shared services and outsourcing across the globe?
Any of us can start with that one. Wow,
Yes.
so much. So I see this as being something you've got to bring some positivity out of all the bad that has actually happened. And I think the industry of both outsourcing and shared services was on a process of reinvention. And I believe coming out of COVID-19 is right. We have reinvented. We have shown that we are essential, that we add value, that we drive agility and flexibility and all those sort of things. In the world of outsourcing, we'd already sort of like rebranded it and repositioned it and moved it into, for the buyers, it's perceived as strategic sourcing rather than procurement. And for those on the delivery side, it's very much sort of like technology and business service delivery to drive innovation, add value, and transform businesses, rather than the old school approach of let's just shove something outside and do it cheaper and probably at an inferior service. All of that is gone. It's a repositioning, and I believe the shared services industry needs to do the same thing. I think by calling ourselves shared services, it automatically makes it sound quite low level. So I've been on this quest to actually stop the language set of shared services and move towards a language set of, global innovation centres or something like that, that shows the value that that community and the work that we do can really add. So, we don't want to be doing low-level processing work cheaper. We want to be seen for what we really do, and that is delivering transformation, driving innovation, and really adding value into the business. So yeah, an opportunity for us to emerge in the way that we know we are, but for everybody else to perceive us in this way. And a lot of that, is happening through the use of technologies. So Anthony was talking about how technologies have been adopted and advanced. Absolutely. We've gone into everything being cashless, all education being done online. Online voting in Parliament was passed within the first couple of weeks, so that's a massive change. You weren't allowed to do any online voting in government before. Customer service has been delivered by bots. All of these technologies that have been introduced are not going to be unintroduced now, are they? So companies that have been spending 5 years contemplating how to go digital and what to actually do ended up doing it in a 3-month period, finding that those programs have delivered great value and enabled them to deliver their services in a much better way, that I think they're going to continue on their automation journeys and their digital transformation journeys. And I think this is a huge opportunity for our industry to take that and drive that forward for organisations around the world.
Right, Alex, any reflection from your side?
Yeah, I just like to recall back, people, the trend now is a lot of people say office space might reduce office space, just like in the Netherlands, in the whole world, big companies is reducing office space. But I mean, in Malaysia or in all the countries, we have an experience too. I always joke with my friends during this period. We have a chance to experience the early retirement, the feeling of early retirement, lockdown at home. And yeah, no, the
Excuse me.
feedback I got is nobody enjoying it because it's too bored. They just want to go back to office. It's like when your office is going to open, I want to go back to office. So that is the work from home. So I think that is maybe a new trend, but I'm not sure how sustainable is that working from home kind of that business model. But when it comes to uh, the business as an SME, it's very important for us to look into the cash flow. I think cash is the king. And whether we look into the business model, whether as a shared services or outsourcing business model, we need to see whether the model is sustainable or not. Now, so this is a good time during this disruptive time for us to engage, really look into our pricing, the business. Maybe I know in Malaysia there are a lot of companies suddenly overnight they're selling hand sanitizer, importing masks from China and start selling all this equipment. You have a lot of factories, so suddenly they're selling hand sanitizer. Now, then, of course, we're looking into the technical competencies of the people we are hiring. Give ourselves a choice. If I have a position, a technical position, one with a degree, just on paper, he or she got a degree, but the other person is maybe she don't have a degree, but with very good technical competency, who are we going to hire? So obviously the person with good technical competency that we're going to hire, you know. And now education is so expensive and you have so many people that is jobless. And all these guys, basically all these students, pity them, they're actually holding a lot of debt owing to loans, study loans. How are they going to pay back without a job? And I'd rather hire somebody who with good technical competency instead of somebody who just a piece of paper, degree paper. So even the student themselves have to relook into this, uh, be more realistic, go for the technical competency, rather than enrolling into universities and just get a piece of paper. Yeah, so that is my sharing during this time.
Anil, I've got a little point to add on. I guess as much as we're talking about outsourcing, we're talking about technology, we're talking about transformation and digital, I think one key point that all of us has to understand that the investment of the platforms or technology has been done over the couple of years. And right now, with that technology being available, all organizations and all companies should look at cost factors, meaning that the cost factor has to come down. And the cost factor cannot be the cost factor cannot be as how we were selling it in the past. There has to be a reasonable way of selling consultancy, selling expertise, selling capabilities to drive this adoption. Because if we are going to use this situation to charge a humongous amount of money in terms of technology embracement, I think then the whole effort of all the countries trying to push the whole adoption of technology to be vast by all technology players for consumers and end users will just go down the drain. So I think this is something, it's a taking point that we have to consider. As much as cost has been a pressure to you, you have to use your innovation to digitalize your whole business, embrace it, bring your costs down, typically upskilling your resources to be able to productively contribute to this whole ecosystem of the change that's happening, you know.
Very good point, Anthony. Now, sort of switching gears, because this webinar is Malaysia centric. Let's get a poll going with Malaysia being at the center. So, Justin, if you could bring up the next poll.
Yep, coming up. Poll is up.
So the question is, what role do you see Malaysian companies play in the new global context? And your options are First, encourage startup culture and innovation. Second, increase Industry 4 and new age digital adoption. Third, upgrade skills of workforce at massive and rapid scales. And next one is promote Malaysia as a SaaS hub, software as a service, platform as a service. I call it X as a service culture. And then the last one is encourage gig economy and entrepreneurship. So use your voting buttons now. So while people are voting, Justin, you mentioned that there is a question.
Yes. You want me to read that out?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Leaders at Apple and Google decided to team up to create COVID-19 contact tracing technologies. Leaders across Europe announced an international alliance with the aim of raising billions of pounds to help find a vaccine and treatments for the virus. Hotels and restaurants are already teaming up rather than competing to attract bookings and to share marketing expenses. Will hyper collaboration will become the new normal? A long question.
Okay, cool. So what I would ask is, audience, you can continue voting while I'll ask one of the panel members to address that question. So
I hope so.
It counts, Kerry.
Yeah, I hope so. And we're seeing great collaboration around the world in the work that we're doing, but also in the way that companies have partners. Our research, we did a trust survey, and our research shows that trust amongst partnerships has gone up during COVID because of that really collaborative effort, people going above and beyond to deliver. So yeah, I think we all know the saying that the sum of the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. So collaborating for me is incredibly important, incredibly valuable. So I like the term hyper collaboration, and I sincerely hope so. So great question from Aslina.
Just to add something to that, Arima, I think, see, going forward, it's very clear that at least in the first couple of years, it's going to be, the capacity to spend for any consumer or company is going to be limited, right? So when you have such a limited time or money to spend, you're going to look at the value offering that anybody is going to give you, right? So therefore, for in this, I would say even more hyper competitive than it was before COVID, you have to come up with an offering that blows the customer's mind away. If you don't do that, you're not going to be scalable, or you're not going to be add value to the end consumer. So a good example is what's happening in the US now. There's a mad dash really for consolidation in the last mile delivery of food, right? Uber has bought the DoorDash, and somebody else is buying, because they recognize that competition is good, but the ultimate solution to consumers is they need to get their food in a scalable way, in a cost affordable way, and having too many competitors were really not adding value in terms of for either the consumer or the restaurants, right? So I think and that's one recognition of the need for hyper collaboration. And other issue is in terms of trade barriers put out by governments and so on. Best example is the US and so on. So I think you need to come up with ways of collaborating that you didn't do before, because you simply can't send over a bunch of engineers, or you can't send a huge bunch of data now anymore outside to certain parts of the world, or take technology. See, Huawei is the 5G lead in the world, right? But you can't use Huawei technology. So you need to come up with a way to kind of bypass these restrictions put in place. I think hyper collaboration is the only way.
Excellent. So I would now get to the attention of the audience as well as our panelists to the poll results. Interestingly, one of the aspects of collaboration can also be gig economy, because especially because of the requirements that we these days have on digital technology or otherwise, where there is a need for a very short period of time, highly specialized skills. And that need is only sort of amplifying as we are evolving, over the last as we have evolved over the last 10 years, and we're going to evolve in the coming years. So let's have a reflection on some of the points that have been mentioned in the results. So Alex, maybe you can start off because this is Malaysia.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the high 29% is on encouraging the gig economy and entrepreneurship. You see, I think in general, Malaysians are quite enterprising due to the nature of from a simple of people selling food on the roadside. We like those hawker centers. So those are all in a way is an entrepreneur, even though they're still running their own business. But I a bit the gig economy. I'm not sure. It is like yes, it's creating a job opportunity. But if you look into the gig economy, they are mostly as a driver, as a rider, dispatching food, and all this. So I'm not very sure about this gig economy. It obviously it's still creating a jobs. It's a job opportunity, no doubt. I understand that when Uber and the Grab, when they were in Malaysia competing, now Grab is basically own the whole Southeast Asia already. Uber sold the Southeast Asia business to Grab. Because of this competition, marketing funds have been dumped in so much, and all these drivers are making a lot of money just by opening two platforms, Grab and Uber, and fetch some drivers. They have target to hit with all the promotion incentive given. They make a lot of money. They say what they used to make working in the private sector or the public sector, they come out, they say 1 month they can make 3 to 4 times more than what they used to make. So it creating that kind of repercussion, the effect. But in terms of the as a driver running, depending on the platform, so how far can you go? No doubt it's going to have a high income, but now there's also complaint to say that because it's a monopoly market now, now in Malaysia we only have Grab. The majority is owned by Grab for all the economy. So that part of it, But entrepreneurship, I totally agree. Encouraging everyone to go on entrepreneurship. Yes.
Excellent. Anybody else quickly on the reflection before we move to our last part of the topic?
No, I just to fill the gap is that I think I said at the beginning that we were seeing much more work use of gig, and I think what's interesting is the complexity of the use of gig. So we're used to talking about it being for Uber and driving or delivering food and things like that. We're now seeing it for really kind of complex software projects where I don't know if anyone's familiar with Toploader from Wipro, but that's actually become a huge part of their business now, and they deliver really complex software projects for clients using gig workers all around the world, and they do it in a really interesting way in that they do it in a you get paid a competition fee for actually submitting your ideas as to how you approach this software challenge, and then if you win the idea from the client, you end up getting paid $100,000 or something for doing the development. So I think we need to sort of like think about the way that gig is going to be used in a very, very different way to what we're familiar with, and I think gig is going to be a huge part of Service Provider 2.0 moving forward.
Excellent. Justin, now let's get the third poll up and running, and this is about the future of shared services and outsourcing.
Yeah, coming up.
And can I request 2 members who had their videos on, if you could just switch off your videos, please. All right, so the next question is, what is the future of shared services and outsourcing services industry? First one is labor arbitrage, high-skilled workforce and new age technology. That kind of reflects to what Kerry just mentioned, which is really at the top end of the skills. It's no longer about kind of the Uber drivers, but it's really at the top end of the skills, data scientists, deep learning programmers, NLPs, that kind of thing. The second one is move to X as a service provider. And this could be, again, from an outsourcing and shared services perspective, it has been transactional in the past, and even it continues to be very similar even now. Going forward, would it be possible that I completely give my accounts payable lock, stocks, and barrel, total cost of ownership to another company? That they manage my accounts payable. We had seen it to some extent within GE, where one of the GE businesses essentially managed the entire payable for a particular business. So third one is a frontline mechanics management. So that's like, we're talking about sales funnels, we're talking about social media management, a lot of data being generated. Most of the companies are not prepared for it. Is that something that the shared services can pick up? The next one is big data analytics services. Very similar. We've got UX, we've got customer experience, we've got digital marketing data, but we also have so much of other data coming from IoT devices, etc. Is that something that the shared services guys should look at? And the last one is high-skill technology services, AI, blockchain, virtual reality, augmented reality. So submit your vote now. And Justin, while people are submitting, if you could look at any other question.
Yeah, there's one more question. Hang on. Gartner HR revealed recently that 74% of organizations across the globe intend to shift some employees to remote work permanently. And yet there will be organizations that will still choose to work from offices post-COVID simply because humans crave connections. How does this affect the leadership styles for organizations in the shared services and outsourcing organizations choosing to work on a hybrid model?
Alex, you opened your mouth, so the question goes to you.
All right. Yeah. For this Gartner, especially in the outsourcing and shared services, shared services in Malaysia perspective, we have this MSC multimedia super corridor where most of these shared services are big MNC came in, centralize the financial services, or even the HR payroll and all this. I'm not sure how you're going to have a HR payroll that run from home. I really don't know. Obviously, it's too PNC to run this from home, even on the financial. Yeah, so that is from the shared services, but in the outsourcing services, like my business in the outsourcing business in the on the document delivery or e-delivery, or even in the call center per se, how would working from home would make sense? I'm not sure. That maybe somebody will come up with a new business model to say that, yeah, we charge you work from home. But then you will probably, you will see, while if everybody on video, you see you pushing your children or your wife or your husband away, that, hey, I'm on video conferencing now, don't stay away. So it's good to see the trend in the next 6 months or a year and see how it goes. And this stays true to IBM. I read an article recently. IBM implemented in 2014. They implemented work from home. Everybody work from home. And 2017, they wrote a paper to say they failed. The whole project failed for them to work from home. So they actually called everybody back to office to work. And there was a paper published by IBM on this on year 2017. Yeah. So that is I would think this is just a trend, or a fade. It might just fade off here. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Alex. I was just looking at the clock, so we are kind of at the end of the session. But before we wrap up, let's have each of the panelists, reflect on the results and maybe leave one last tip or a comment or an opinion for the viewers before we close it. So Imran, maybe we start with you.
Yeah. Look, COVID is 19 is a once in a 100-year event, and those come around as well. But I think what will remain going forward would be an accentuation of trends that started before, right? So, for example, working from home is a trend that started well before for the flexibility that it provides for both the employer and yourself. I think we'll have a little bit more of that. Work went from developed countries because of the labor and cost arbitrage. That's not going to suddenly reduce because nobody in the developed world is going to accept lower minimum wages or a reduction in the kind of benefits that they got. So then the employees has to ask themselves, look, does it make sense for me to do big onshore various activity. So I think for me, going forward, the future for those in shared services and outsourcing and offshoring is there will be an accentuation of trends that started before, right? It is preferable that you move up the value chain because whatever that can be automated will eventually be automated. But you also need to also understand the kind of makeup of your country or your company's value offering. Some countries can be a financial accounting hub because they have a lot of accounting students and or accountants. Others are very good in terms of voice and so on. You can move, but you also need to keep an eye on the strengths and weaknesses of your own offering. And finally, my word to you is keep an eye out on the next 6 or 12 months, right? Because you're just looking at today and the next 3, because it's what's in front of you, you're going to hit and and you're going to crash, as opposed to something that is much more closer. Yes, by all means survive, but also look to grow and thrive, because that's the only kind of organization that's going to survive in the long term, and not someone that survives on a day-to-day basis forever.
Thank you, Imran. Anthony, in 60 seconds,
point number 1, be absolutely open in your ideas of adopting technology. Number 2, look into your business, start collaborating. Don't be selfish, don't be a single player. Start collaborating, start adopting other gig technologies to complement your business. The cake is big enough for you to share. Number 3, keep your team innovated, continue to give them ideas, bring a lot of ideas into place. Number 4, create an environment that is going to be sustainable for your business. And number 5, stay healthy and stay positive.
Thank you, Anthony. Alex.
Yeah, I think what I pointed out, most of it has been mentioned by Anthony already. So yeah, the most important part is stay healthy and stay safe. But in the future for the outsourcing industry and the shared services, I think all the points mentioned here are relevant. Even on this labor arbitrage, high skill, big data analysis, on the AI, it very much depending on which services you are doing. So as long as we are providing a better value for the customer, for them to improve their sales. At the end, customer want to have improved sales, bring in more numbers, revenues. So these are the good services to improve whatever you are doing. Look into all these items that has been mentioned. See how you want to value add the services that you're providing to your customer. Doesn't matter whether in the shared services or in the outsourcing industry.
Excellent. And Kerry, finally to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I concur with everything everybody's already said here, but one build on that is, talent. There was a war on talent before, and that's only going to actually exacerbate. So really, really look after your people, focus on upskilling your people. And I think one thing that's come to the fore is we keep talking about technology and technology skills, really, really important. But I think the soft skills, we've got to keep focusing on the soft skills as well. Yeah. That would that would be my add, in addition to what you guys have already said. So
excellent. Thank you, Kerry. So with that, I would like to sort of give my sort of closing remarks here. It's been sort of 4 or 5 months in most of the countries where we have been looking at or facing the lockdown. As I mentioned when I started out, there are trends that were already brewing in the horizon that are going to disrupt the coming decades. And most of them are going to have deep impact in most of the countries, most of the industries anyway. So my suggestion would be to all people is do not forget to also look at other trends that are taking place and not just look at COVID-19 as an isolation. And the last part is We don't know exactly how new normal is going to look like. We have our own opinion, but we do not know how the new normal is going to look like. But one thing I can absolutely promise you, that there is going to be more jobs coming out after we come back from the crisis. And that has always been the trend in the future, in the past, and I hope to see the same thing in the future. With that, I would like to do a round of applause to our great panelists virtually, and thank you for joining us today. And then I pass it to Justin. And before I do that, audience, you've been lovely. Thanks for participating in the poll. We hope that you got some value out of the discussion today. And if you want, you could always reach out to Justin to get in touch with any one of us to continue the discussion further. With that, Justin, back to you.
Thank you, Anirban. Thank you, Kerry, Anthony, Alex, and Imran. I think you guys did a fantastic job. I think you all need a big round of applause for yourselves. Though we are not face to face, we did something well today. Thank you very much. And I'm sure it was very informative session to all those attendees who joined us. So before we call it a close, I would like to invite Anthony Raja, our Deputy Chair. Anthony, are you online already?
Hi, Justin, I am.
Yeah, okay. So over to you. Anthony will just do a closing before we say goodbye.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think it's a wonderful session today as part of the Touch Me Not Reimagining Business Services series, resetting leadership in a disruptive times. I must thank our moderator, Anirban Sen, for taking us through a wonderful session. And special thanks to Kerry, to Anthony, to Imran, and to Alex for your great words of wisdom and sharing at this right now resetting mode. We are in most countries in the recovery path. So the most famous words like contactless, cashless, collaborative economy is now in a high-paced environment. So today's sharing helps our members who are on the call. A special thanks to all of them for having joined this session and enriched ourselves with your knowledge. With that, on behalf of our chairman, Chair, organizing Chair Raymond, and our OM team, a special thanks to all of you for making this happen today. Thank you once again. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Good day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.